Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 112 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Tonight, I am joined by a guy who's becoming my frequent co-host, Mr. Clint McCoy. And then on the other line via Skype is none other than the world-famous Dan Infalt. Guys, how's it going tonight?
Good.
Right on,
Jason.
Jason. Good. Thanks for. How are you guys doing tonight? Appreciate you guys being here.
Well, I appreciate you guys being here. Hey, you know what? It's what, Dan? For us, it's less than a month, isn't it?
Yeah.
Less than a month.
I just got trail cam pictures of on my email camera of my target buck yesterday, walking out to right where I expect them.
Really?
So I'm feeling pumped up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. Was he in daylight?
Yeah, it was like 4:00 in the afternoon.
Ooh.
The camera stuffed right into his bedding area, and I was expecting them to be there when the acorn started dropping, and they just started dropping.
Yeah.
And there he is.
Huh. Okay.
I like this one. He's got a weird rack. He's got probably about 16-inch G2s, but he's only got like a 9 frame.
Mm-hmm.
But cool buck.
You know, we did a whole bunch of Clint and I did a bunch of shows earlier in the year about trail cameras and using trail cameras and how to use them and when to use them and where to use them and all that stuff. And that is a method that you still I'm not going to say you depend on it, but it's something that you definitely employ in your tool kit, so to speak, right?
Sure, but I just don't become addicted to it like some people.
Right. Yeah.
It's just another tool.
You know, and that's the thing that I think we got out of the whole thing, or at least one of the things that I took away was that, you know, trail camera data, especially this time of year, is really a hope and a dream, unless you've got a bunch of history with that particular buck, like you and Clint do on some of the ones that you guys are chasing. I don't, because it's only my second year on this property that I'm on. But you just can't put too much stock into, you know, what you're seeing this early, unless, of course, you've got history, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we won't stick too much or spend too much time rather on the trail cameras. Clint, what burning questions do you have in your mind tonight? I mean, that we can talk about on the air.
Well, you know, I just told my wife this before I left. I'm like, hey, I got to get going. I got to go talk to like legit, like one of my like guys that I look up to really heavily in the outdoor quote industry or whatever. You know, and it's just I'm just happy to talk to Dan. A lot of his content has really helped me, you know, understand and what I was doing, more so what I was doing wrong versus everything that I was doing right. I already had several things right, but like his Farm Country Bedding DVD series that came out, was it like last summer, Dan?
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. I cannot stop watching that. I've probably watched it a dozen times or better, and it's super thorough. Like with all your bedding stuff, like your hill country and marsh and stuff like that. I don't have a lot of that in my area. Ours is broken farm country here in southeastern Illinois, and we have a little bit of river bottom bedding and some marshes, but man, a lot of this is broken farm country, and that really tied a lot of your stuff together and things that I've watched. You know, you put out on Beast and your online presence, and it's really helped me a ton. It's phenomenal stuff.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Dan. When you came out with when you were cutting the footage for your that Farm Country DVD, did you do that all with the intent of, hey, maybe one of these days I'm going to create? Or was this something that you just did on the fly and went, you know what, I can adapt and make a Farm Country betting DVD out of all this content?
No, I've been working on this DVD series that I'm doing for, probably over 20 years, maybe 25. Some of my original video footage is actually VHS. They didn't even have the digital tapes back then, and I've lost a lot of footage, unfortunately. But I've been working on this for years, and that's why you see the young Dan in there, the old Dan, the middle-aged Dan, and always talking about the different tactics, because this has always been my mission to bring back the kind of woodsmanship and stuff that we used to have, where I think nowadays it's turned more into, gadgets and, guys in fancy suits with patches on, and that's not really what hunting is to me. It's more of getting out there, figuring out animals and playing a chess game. And I think I'd like to see other people enjoy that like I do. And if these young kids don't have success because they're sitting on field edges and over scrapes and over a random rub they find in the woods because that's what they're seeing on TV, then they gravitate away from hunting. And I think we need to, get more people involved in hunting, and we'll have, better people in society. So that's kind of been my mission.
Well, I think that's pretty well said. We have a huge problem facing us in the future here if something doesn't drastically change, and that's hunter recruitment. We have very little hunter recruitment right now, and the numbers continually dwindle. And do you think, Dan, that it's, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit trail, but do you think it's due in partially to the, I don't want to say commercialization of hunting, but that's kind of what it is, just the gadgets and the widgets and all the different stuff that people see on TV, etc. Do you think that's hurting the industry?
Oh, sure I do. And I think the way hunting has gone, where all these people think they got to be, in order to be somebody, they got to be sponsored by somebody or something. It's turned into TV shows into, basically they're selling something. In order to sell something, you have to market around that's how you kill these deer and stuff. Instead of just telling the truth about it, they have to market a product, and it's just ruined hunting TV and stuff. It really has, and it's given young, naive people coming into this sport the wrong idea of what hunting's about. It's not about having the biggest lease that you kick everybody else off of, and it's not about having the most money and buying the best outfitters. It's about and it's not a pecker measuring contest. Like, to me, I would be just as happy helping Jason get a giant buck as I would getting one myself. I mean, if you got buddies and you hunt together and stuff, that's what it should be about. If you got somebody in the group that's like a jealous kind of guy who's always, upset when you kill something, don't hang around with those kind of people who are like a cancer, But that's what we got to get rid of. We got to get more of the sportsmanship where it's not about who gets the biggest buck. I mean, you get the biggest one and it's great and all that, but it's really, you should be just as happy for your friends when they do and stuff too, and we're getting too far away from that stuff.
Yeah, that's spot on, Dan. Like, I joke around sometimes when Dan posts on his forum and stuff like that. Like, he makes some really cool content, like on Beast on the Facebook page and stuff. And I joke around. He's like Master Yoda to me. Like, when you say stuff like that, seriously, dude. Like, when you say stuff like that, it's pretty goddamn hard to argue that. Like, it's spot on just about every time, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a buck that you killed like right beside a road that everybody overlooked, or how the industry is going. It's all spot on. It's like Master Yoda stuff, man. I love it.
I do too. I think it brings back simplicity to hunting that should exist, and I think that if everyone started out like I did, or probably like you did, Clint or Dan, I had a bike 3.5 miles to my, bow hunting land, and I strapped my bow on my bike, and I had, jeans and a camouflage jacket, and that was about it. And things have obviously changed, and I have, obviously more than that now, but I learned to appreciate just simply going out there and just being out there, not having to kill something, not needing to kill something, but to enjoy the experience. And I still enjoy the experience to this day, whether I have a Quiet Cat bike to ride out there on, or a whatever kind of camouflage on it. Regardless, I just enjoy the experience.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that we don't spend enough time talking about. And I guess the one thing that I just would like to say is that I don't think Dan is saying, and Dan, you can speak to this in just a second, I don't think that you're saying, all those things are bad, or camouflage, this kind of camouflage is bad, or, that kind of camouflage is bad, or it's just that that can't be what you base everything on. There's different tools, just like there is for a guy or gal that's building a house. You could do it with a handsaw, but there's other things that you could throw in that toolbox to make maybe the job a little bit easier. But the principles have never changed. Square is
right.
square.
It's like this, Jason. I mean, if you're in a situation where you need a certain kind of camo, you get that certain kind of camo and you use it.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that from then on you always have to use that particular brand of camo, or case in point. I mean, when I go hunting,
yep,
I generally have a pocket knife in my pocket, and I got a bow and a release and a tree stand on my back. If I'm going somewhere that's really remote, I might have a compass and a map or something. But you see these other guys, and they got backpacks full of binoculars and 3 different kinds of calls and all kinds of sprays to spray down with. And I mean, just, it's crazy. I mean, they got antlers in there and all kinds of crap, and you're like, wow. I mean, you're going on a cabin trip, and I've said this before too. I mean, they take more on a 1-day hunting trip than I take on a 3-day camping trip. And it's really not about all this tactical gear. It's about being in the right spot at the right time. But you're right. I mean, I like camo as much as anybody else, and and I use trail cameras and stuff. I just don't, base everything on it. I mean, some guys, they get a trail camera and they like it, and all of a sudden they got 50 of them out, and really they dirt up their area so much with all these trail cameras, checking them constantly, trying to get a pattern down, that really they're going to probably have a great picture of that buck mounted on their wall, but they're not going to get the buck because they gave up their their tactical advantage to that buck by getting sent all over the place and freaking them out. You
Right.
can't just base everything off of a product or two. You got to go out there and understand the terrain, understand how deer use that terrain, understand where there'll be in daylight and what kind of sign is left at night, and understand where you got to be. And I mean, if you get good at it, I mean, I can go in most woodlots. If there's a big buck there, I can pretty accurately guess where he's going to be, and within a hunt or two be on him. And I don't think most people can do that, and it's because they get out of that realm. I mean, most guys go in the woods and they just wander around when they scout until they find a rub or something, and they set up a tree stand. Well, there's a rub here, there's a scrape here, there's more sign here than any place else. Here's a trail with some tracks on, with no regard to why that trail's there, why that rub's there, why that scrape's there. And you got to get more back into the woodsmanship to understand that stuff, and that's what's going to make you a killer, not having, spent more money than anybody else. And that's a big part of that products thing too that you brought up, is that a lot of guys try to merit their worth by how much they spend on products. Like you ask a guy what bow he uses, and instead of saying, well, I use a Matthews or whatever it is, they always seem to want to add the price into it, like it's some sort of badge of honor that you overpaid for a bow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But But,
yeah. And I think those are the same people that will say, I shot a 162 last year or a 154 last year. Like, just say, hey, I shot a nice 10-pointer. You know, like everything's got to be down to the number. That's just weird. It's just not me. Don't you think? Let me ask you this, guys, or both of you, really. But don't you think that when it comes to the internal drive that we have to go out and find sign and interpret sign and stuff like that, don't you think you've got to either be born with that or learn it from somebody else that has that kind of drive? Because it's hard work, a lot of it is. And I think some of that just gets totally killed off this
really,
day and age.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to buy it. I mean, I get a lot of people that they talk to me for 15 minutes and they really want to kill a big buck, and I know they never will. You know, maybe they'll get one by luck or one or two, but they'll never get to the point where I was when I was, you know, like in my prime, in my 30s and 40s. They won't get there because they don't have the drive. You've got to really, really want it. I mean, I killed a lot of those big bucks out of sheer determination. And what I know now, what I'm teaching now, that everybody is so excited about, is stuff I learned when I was learning stuff through bullheaded drive and determination. But that drive is what got me there. I mean, you got to want it. I mean, you got to imagine. Most guys, they go to work, they're with their wife, they're doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they're hunting. A guy that's got that drive, he's always hunting. It's always in his mind. He's always thinking about that next move. Even when he's, having dinner with his wife, he's looking in her eyes, telling her how lovely she is, and he's thinking about killing some buck. Honestly, that's the truth. And you're, when I'm sitting in a tree stand and that buck's not showing up, I'm concentrating on, okay, where is he? Why isn't he here? Where's the next place I got to check? Where some guys are just going to that stand over and over again, or they're looking at a map and saying, well, which way's the wind going? Okay, I'm going to stand 7. That's not me. I'm trying to figure out, what am I missing here? I'm going to hunt that buck down. I know he's in this woods. I'm after a target animal. He's in this area. I'm going to hunt him down. I've hunted here, 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 and here. I haven't seen him. What's left? Where could he be where nobody is bothering him? And I will go in there and I will hunt those bucks down. And more often than not, I'll have at least contact with that animal. Where most people go out and they don't even see the animal, because they're hopping from stand to stand, rotating through them.
And I can speak from one experience at least, and that was last year when I kind of finished up hunting the farm that I had owned for 13 years, and I chased this buck called the fourth quarter that I really didn't, intend to even hunt out there, but I put a trail camera out there, checked it once, and found him. And I don't think that there was a whole lot more rewarding feeling than getting him narrowed down through trail cameras, through talking to neighbors, I guess deviantly, talking to neighbors and finding out if they had seen him and getting an idea where his core was and realizing where I had to be. And the first night I should have killed him, but I didn't. I thought that there wasn't enough light because I couldn't see him with my video camera. I had him at 18 yards, and I just ultimately didn't have the settings right on the camera and ended up passing the deer. But that was a ton of fun, and that just pushed me even harder to want to do it even more. Rather than just going out and hoping for something to happen like a lot of us do, and I still do that at times. I think we all do. It's a lot more rewarding going out, having a plan, working the plan, sticking with the plan, and then having the plan, work out, or changing the plan because it didn't work out. But you got to have a plan, I think, in order to kill some of these big bugs.
For guys that have...
Go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
For guys that have shot like a couple of nice bucks, using scent or rattling antlers or something, and they get a nice buck, it's a rewarding feeling. But if you really want a reward, find out about some huge buck in the swamp where you hunt that everybody's hunting. Watch that thing on a regular basis. Figure him out. Try to scout out and figure out where he's living. Take your best guess. Go in and set up and watch that thing get out of a bed 75 yards from you, right where you expect it, and walk and you kill it. There is nothing more rewarding than that. And that, that should be the goal, not to just go out there kind of bumbling around tricking them,
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, I think, Dan, and sometimes you talk about that drive and that push, out in the summer, and it's, 105 heat index, and you're walking through standing corn to get to timber and stuff like that. That kind of stuff sucks. But sometimes that crazy drive, accidentally gets me in trouble, and I'll accidentally bump the guy I'm after. And I'm like, well, God dang, so I tend to err on the side of probably too pushy on them than not pushy enough. But I feel like I would rather know at least if I bump one out of a bed, and I just did that 3 days ago, like an idiot. I totally bumped one of my targets I've been working on for 3 seasons out of his midday bed, and I knew I shouldn't have been in there, but I couldn't help it. I wanted to get in there and get a fresh set hung. And I thought I could get away with it while the standing corn around this little pothole. And he let me stand there, and I was eyeballing a trail, and he let me stand there for literally about probably 3.5 minutes just taking it in. And as soon as I took 10 more steps, he was bailing out of there. And I'm like, God, I knew better than to do this.
Well,
so
I'll tell you something. I wouldn't kick yourself that much, because if you're not occasionally bumping your target animal and swearing at yourself, saying you're an idiot, and that you're not pushing yourself hard enough, because you're not going to get close enough or learn enough unless you're getting that close. I mean, you take when I kill them, a lot of times the tree I'm in, 10 more yards and I'd blown that deer out setting up. 10 yards back and I wouldn't shoot him in daylight. I mean, you've got to be in the right tree in a lot of cases with mature bucks, especially on public land. And especially when you start getting outside of that rut, there's a little window where you can kill them things. And I think a lot of people don't get that. I mean, you think about some of the biggest bucks I've shot. I watch them get out of their bed as much as an hour before before dark. And by the time I kill them, it's closing time. And you think about that for a second. You got to be right in that right spot. So if you're not pushing those windows and you're not getting in there, and occasionally, even when you're scouting, if you're not occasionally bumping a giant buck and swearing at yourself, saying you'll never do it again, even though you will, you're not getting close enough.
Well, I that's precisely what I did this weekend. I can remember actually texting Clint when I did it.
We did it together. We both did it together like a couple of idiots. Literally within minutes of each other.
I don't feel bad at all about it, to be quite frank with you, because I finally found him. I found him, and I was just so
there's
excited.
Something about me. I mean, I can know there's a buck in the area and have a hard time killing them, just because there's that little leering doubt or something. But if I get my eyeballs on them and I really want them, that thing's pretty much dead. I will hunt them down. So jumping them out of a bed or something is a good thing for me. It might tip them off in that spot, but I know he's there then. And they don't move around that far. I'll find him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's...
And see, I knew better. I knew better on Sunday to do this, because I've known this deer to frequent this area, and I just couldn't freaking help myself. I should have just waited until, the opener and slip in there with the hang-on and get him. But I'm sure it'll change with, the rotation of crops and how the beans around it will turn brown and everything. And I know he'll shift, and I know where he shifts to typically, but gosh, I had no business being in there. But Jason and I both literally, you were doing it in Wisconsin, I was doing it in Illinois, literally about minutes apart, scattering our target bucks like matchsticks to the wind. And I walk out of there like a scalded dog with my tail between my legs, like, what an idiot. But I went back to the truck and grabbed the stand and crammed it right back up in there.
Yeah, you're already in there. Why not, right?
That's exactly what I did too. Yep. I I can remember thinking about watching your hill country bedding video, Dan, and there's one. I think you were actually in Kentucky, maybe. Is that possible that you were in? You were in Kentucky.
Yeah, hill country. I think I did some scouting in Kentucky. Yeah. And
you were at this little tiny rock outcropping that was just like the most perfect bedding area for a deer, and you had pointed it out to the guys, and I had kind of found this last winter through some walks that I had done, And so I wanted to get in there, and I had been getting scattered trail camera pictures of this deer, and so I went in there, and lo and behold, yep, he, I ended up seeing him and spooking him. But yeah, I hung back not that far. I just felt like I was out of his view to get up in the tree, and I was probably. I'm cutting it pretty close scent wise, with the wind, as long as it's out of the northwest west. I'm okay, but I got it in there real close, and just like Clint, I used that opportunity to just get in there and see once if I can make it happen. But let me ask you this, Dan, if I can change directions, and Clint certainly, interject whenever you want. But how many times, Dan, have you killed one of your target bucks out of a stand that you hung in August or September or July beforehand?
Oh, geez. I don't know if that's ever happened.
I was afraid you were going to say that. There went my whole frickin' season down the drain.
I don't want to say it that bad. I've killed a lot of nice bucks on pre-hung stands. But I think out of all the mature ones I've shot, and as a matter of fact, I did a breakdown of it recently. I should send you that. The top 10 mature bucks I did, and the stats for each one. And I think every one of them I was hunting, and every one of them was on not everyone, but something like 8 out of 10 were out of a first-time sit. And all of them were at least the first time that year. And I'm talking mature deer, like 5 and older. But when you get to that class, there's no room for error. You think about it like this. I mean, a buck comes into your area when he's 2 and then spends his life there till you kill him or he dies of some other cause. Mm-hmm. That first year, he's vulnerable. And at 3, he's starting to get a little cocky, and he's still a little vulnerable, but he's starting to get smart. At 4, they really get smart. I mean, they've had you for 2 years telling them where you hunt. And most guys end up going to the same trees and stuff, and they go in and access the properties the same way. And you start to see those older deer, instead of bedding in the absolute most secure spot, they find secure spots where they can watch your access, where you come in every time you come in, where they can smell you from. And they start playing this game of hunting you. And that's when they really get hard to kill. And that's when I usually get them by doing something, out of the box. I come in from a different way. I try a different area. I try a different way of setting up. And the first time you go in there, you kill this giant. Mm-hmm. And then some of those spots have become really great spots for me. And I'll go back year after year after year, and I'll see good bucks and I'll kill good bucks, but I'll never get that giant again. You know what I mean? You'll get those nice ones, those 2 or 3 year olds that are about Pope and young, but you won't get that giant again from that spot. You got to go find him again,
Clint, how about you?
I think for me, it's, I don't know. I think for me, I probably on pre-hung stands, if we're talking like summer stands, that you hang, July and August, I think I've probably killed half a dozen of my target bucks out of them, but I haven't been hanging them over summer sign or like summer feeding patterns is what really throw guys off around here. Guys see these velvet bucks just cruising out in the soybean fields, and they put a stand on the edge, and guess what? He vacates when the beans turn brown.
Yeah.
So like most of the time there's summer stands that I have had history and knowledge about making that move, throwing them in, but when, like you said, it's oftentimes the first or second set in there, and they come rolling right by.
Part of it with me is too, though, that I'm just not hunting like that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
always mobile. So the chances of me shooting one out of a stand I set in August is pretty nil if I didn't set a stand in August. I do have some set stands, and I do change some stands around on a little piece of private I got. But usually those set stands, I usually see a big buck and move to them, or I see nice bucks. The mature bucks I usually end up moving to. But if I put more stands out like Clint is doing, I probably would have some luck in that direction just by odds.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that as we were talking about it. I think it's important to point out that you're hunting a lot more public than you are private, and
even when I'm hunting private, I'm pretty mobile. You know,
Oh.
I don't like hunting the same trees that have been hunted over and over again.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I think my statistical prevalence is shifting more towards Dan's style of, like I would say, like last year, I was probably 50% pre-hung and 50% mobile. And those mobile sets, you know, is it a lot of work racking them in and hunting like that? Hell yeah, it is. But man, I've had some of the best hunts in the last 2 or 3 years of using mobile hunting style like that than I've had in 10 years combined. Like it's gotten my attention, and I'm shifting the needle more towards just sheer mobility.
Sure.
When a guy first starts it's hard because you stumble around a little bit. You're not used to setting the stands up and stuff and the sticks up and stuff, and you make a noise, you blow your hunt and stuff, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? But if you stick with it, you'll see a hell of a lot more deer, and you'll have a lot more action. You'll see a lot more mature bucks, with the mobile hunt.
It's just more, I think it's just more practice, Hank. Like when I first started doing that, it was difficult, and I think that's what keeps it. I think that's what keeps a lot of people from doing that is they get frustrated when they try it the first few times, and it's cumbersome hanging sets each time. But the more you do it, the more you can do it with your eyes closed. It's way easier now than it was for me, 6 or 7 years ago when I was just kicking around with mobile hunting. Now I love having, like I used to in the summers, man, I would have been out all day today, hanging sets, trimming lanes and stuff like that. Now I don't stress about that crap in the summer anymore. Like now it's just more, hey, I've got a couple, 3 mobile sets hanging back in the shed. Let's go grab one and go cram it down his throat.
Yeah. It's kind of the way I hunt too. I mean, if you're trying to get those deer in daylight moving from their beds and they're only moving 100 or 200 yards, it's one thing if you're waiting for one to make a mistake in rut or something. But if rut's a 2-week window and you're hunting the whole season, and for us in Wisconsin, we got another month more than you do, Clint. So, I mean, I'm pushing those windows of that bedding area, so I'm trying to get in close. You go in there and you hunt more than 2 or 3 times in a year, that spot's done. A buck will not feel safe there anymore. So I'm moving in, really close, giving it that one time when everything's perfect to hunt that spot, and I'm creeping into 100 yards from that buck. I'm creeping up to a tree that's like as close as I can get. I'm climbing up the backside, hiding from him, and getting just high enough where he can't see me. And I'm setting up, and when the things get up and come to me, I'm shooting them right at dark. And if I put a stand there and left it there, or raked a path to it or something, or cut a lane to walk there, it'd be over. That deer would know he's being hunted, and he'd move to a different spot. He's in there because nobody's hunting him. So for me, that mobile hunting is really shifting into those hot spots, and that's probably the reason I have so much success with it.
Let me ask you this, Dan. Like when you say you've got a buck's bedding area like semi-defined, his core's tight. When you talk about creeping up to your tree, are these trees that you have eyeballed during the off season and areas that you think you can hang on certain winds, or do you just do that strictly all on the fly?
I do both. There's nothing that's better than having really know an area, know all the bedding areas, get to know them in winter, and figure out what trees you should be in. Doesn't mean I'm going to be in that tree. I mean, it might change. A sign might change. You get out there, it shifts a little, which is part of the reason of being mobile. You get to your stand, and then all of a sudden the sign is 40 yards over, and you're sitting there going, okay, tomorrow I'll move. Well, tomorrow he's going to know you were there when he walks around during the night and smells that you're there. So you need to be in the right spot the day you get there. So you might want to shift around. But if you know the tree, I mean, there are the trees that you have in a spot, it's a lot easier to slip in there, slide in there, and and hunt them. And a lot of times I'll know an area real well. Like say I know a smaller like 700 or 800 acre marsh or something, and I walk around it and I know all the bedding, and I've hunted it a couple of years and I know where the bucks bed. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean this public land is going to have a buck every year that I want to hunt. So I might just go through here one day, in the morning, and walk all the feeding areas, the oak flats and the edges of private where there's crop fields and stuff, and look for that sign. Find that big rubs or something, or some big tracks or something, so I know there's a big buck there. And then I'll go in and I'll spot hunt those bedding areas that I pre-scouted. But in a lot of cases, I love to hunt deer in new spots, challenging spots where I've never been. I mean, that's one of my real thrills, is to go and figure out an area and go in there and hunt it down. And hunting the spots I already know kind of gets boring. But when I do that, then I'm guessing on a bedding area by my experience of what I've seen over the years, and figuring out where they're coming in and out, and trying to creep in, looking at the sign real quietly and slowly, and figuring out as I go, picking a tree from a distance, and planning a path to get it, guessing about where the buck's going to be, and getting in there and hunting. And I've had a lot of success both ways.
Well, Clint, you had some questions, or you wanted to talk a little bit about the Farm Country DVD. I'm just curious to hear, other than the fact that the topography is different from hill country to farm country. Well, there's farm country in hill country, but you've got to contend with those hills, which is a whole nother animal. Is the premise, or is the strategy that much different in quote unquote farm country versus hill country?
Are you asking me or Clint?
I'm asking whoever wants to answer.
For me, if it's flat farm country,
yep.
The biggest thing people have a problem with is that the deer are watching them access the property.
That's it.
What I do is instead of going out and set up random stands out in spots, you'll hear guys that hunt land, and they'll tell you over and over again, and I scout properties for people a lot, so I see this a lot. They'll tell me, I get pictures of giant bucks all the time. I get them in daylight and stuff. I never see them from stand. And I'll go, well, that's because they're watching you. And you go on, sure enough, they always go out from the same, so they park in the same spot, they access the farm in the same spot, and you go and look, and the tree lines and stuff, watching that, you'll find the biggest buck beds, watching the access or watching where you come in there. And for me, what I do a lot is I come in from a side, and I'll get in a very big tree, and where I can watch the most open area I can, and I'll glass it a couple of days before I hunt it. And I'll see where those deer get up and stuff, because what they like to do is they bed on a hard transition. What I mean by that is where trees and brush meet a field. They like stuff that's seldom walked, like a tree line or something that nobody walks along, or a little island of brush. But they'll bed on that downwind side where they're smelling the woods behind them and looking into the field in front of them. And if you enter that field anywhere, he's sitting there watching you. He ain't gonna come out. He knows you're there. So guys want to set up when the wind's in their face. So they want to walk in, the deer's bedding in this wood lot, and they know it. So they want to set up on that wood lot while the deer's in there. So they walk up to that edge, and they sit there knowing that buck's going to come out to that edge and feed, and the buck never shows up. Well, that's because he was sitting on that edge watching you as you approached it. You're better off on an off wind or something where he's bedding in a different spot, because they're going to bed on those transitions with that wind to their back, watching the opening, and people will get seen walking through those openings. And that's the hugest downfall that they have. They got to think outside of the box about how they access those properties.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely 100% my experience after watching your Farm Country DVD and like putting some of those in motion. That is the one big thing that I have completely changed on how I'm chasing these farm country deer, is how I'm accessing it. And now I do all kinds of different access things that I didn't used to do, because I feel like they're spying on me. We have a lot of little small fence rows and, connectors in between bigger timber. And oftentimes those bucks are bedded in those little fence rows, or those little thumbs that jut out and give him a little bit of elevation to see the access lane or the farmer's house or whatever, and smell everything behind him. And you got to realize that that's 100% correct. Those guys are watching you. And I've seen it 100 times where I'll be walking down a random fence row, and a big buck jumps out of it, and he's got like the ability to jump, to make 2 leaps and put the fence row between you and him in the blink of an eye, or over a creek basin or something like that, out of a jump area like that. But he's got, if you go over to those beds and you sit down and look, God dang, you're right. He's watched me come this whole way and let me get within 10 yards of him before I blow him out of here.
And the guys that haven't scouted beds don't realize that once you start looking at those beds in January and February and stuff, and really surveying them, it is obvious that those are lookouts watching you. I mean, they're in like the perfect spots watching your axis. And it's funny, every time somebody hires me to look at a farm or something, probably 6 or 7 out of 10, I will find one of those giant buck beds right next to where they park and access their property. In some open area where they never walk.
That often?
Yeah, it's pretty often.
Wow.
More than not. Yeah.
Yeah, so the buck that I bumped on Sunday, he is literally bedding like 50 yards in from a gravel, or from a main blacktop road, and there's like a farmer's like commodity shed right there, so they're in and out of there with equipment all the time. And he literally let me walk down the road past that equipment shed area and hook around and get into the timber with him before he blew up out of there. But he literally watched me walk by him and then watched me walk into the timber, and I thought I was doing it covert. It's absolutely not what you would think. Where he was living, it was just a tiny little knob that sticks out of a crappy creek bed. So I went over there and just kind of eyeballed it, and the dude watched me walk by him on the road. Like, it's just not what you would anticipate, but he's watching that commodity shed, he's watching the road, he's smelling everything behind him.
Yeah, everybody thinks that bucks bed in the middle of the woods, and it's not true. They're edge animals. They're in thick spots on edges or in open areas. They don't bed in the middle of open woods. Well, I guess they do occasionally, but the majority of mature bucks certainly have some huge advantage about where they're bedded, and those edges are what give them the advantage.
So would you say that's true no matter where you're hunting, Dan?
Well, I mean, hill country, a lot of it has to do with thermals and direction of wind, and you get a little bit of that on every farm too, because you get some roll to the land.
Sure.
The farm I hunt that's near my house here only has elevation changes of about 10 feet. But what you see, and I see this on a lot of farms, is those leeward sides of those small hills will still have bedding just like the big hills.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have them at the lowest points of elevation where it's almost into the water where it gets wet. You'll find big buck bedding, and you'll have bedding on all the edges watching you with the wind to the back. And that's where the mature bucks will be. And what a guy's got to remember too is you'll walk into a lot of these terrains and stuff. You'll find beds all over the place.
Sure.
You got to be able to ignore that and just look at the ones that are where they're supposed to be. Mature bucks will take those king spots and those primary spots, and the lesser stuff will fill the voids. And some of those lesser animals probably haven't learned those hard lessons yet,
Dan, you just mentioned that, typically a big buck is going to be in, I think you called it a transition area, or a thick area, maybe along a fence would be, or along the edge of timber, somewhere where he's got a good vantage point to see that edge, and he can put his back to the timber and watch the edge. I don't know if you remember walking the property with me last year, but at one point you got down on your hands and knees and you pointed out inside, basically I would call it inside of a brush pile, this buck bed, and it was in that exact spot. And I guess I never really put two and two together until this conversation. That's probably why I'm getting him on trail camera now this year, as early as I am, because he's bedded right that close to the edge. And I guess most folks wouldn't think that they're typically bedded that close to the edge.
A lot of people will look at like a thick area that's been logged or something that's really thick.
Mm-hmm.
and just think all the bucks are in the middle of that.
No.
And really, does and stuff will be in the middle of that. Those bucks will be on that edge. They'll be on the downwind edge of it. Even if it's a clear cut in big woods or whatever, they're going to be on the edge of that thick on the downwind side, looking out. And it's pretty consistent. But you'll find beds all over that thick stuff. But that's not necessarily where the big bucks will be.
How much of that stuff gets thrown out the window come October 25th?
Well, not much of it for me. I mean, I'm paying real close attention to where these things bed and stuff. And I think for me, a lot of my success comes from faith, from knowing this from over the years, from what I've seen, and having a real good estimate where I think he's going to be bedded. And a lot of times they show up there. You know, most of the big bucks I kill are on purpose. I have a real good guess of where they're at. I take my shot, and they are. You know, obviously, most of the time when I go out, I'm wrong, just like everybody else. You got to fail a lot to be successful. But the more you're right, the more success you have. But hunting is one failure after another until you're successful. So it's not, you know, you'll hear a lot of these young guys. They'll watch the video or something, or they'll start reading about my tactics, and they'll go out and they'll go scouting, and I'll get a message from them, you know, oh my God, you're spot on, right where you thought they'd be. The bed's there, the big rubs are there. I would have never dreamed that there'd be a buck here, and it's obvious he's living here. I'm going to kill this thing. But what they don't realize is I hunt a spot like that almost every day of the season, and I'm killing my 1 or 2 deer a year. You know what I'm saying? 1 or 2 big bucks out of 70 hunts. It's not as easy as it sounds, but you're going to get to be a better hunter. You're going to get into the action more. You know, I think when people look at the videos and stuff I put out, they think, holy cow, this guy kills a big buck every time he's out. It's just that, you know, I've got 40 years of killing, or 40 plus years of killing big bucks like this. A lot of them get accumulated, and you see a lot of pictures and a lot of video. It doesn't mean we have success every time. We just don't show the videos of when we fail, you know?
Clint, anything more you want to ask on hill country, or excuse me, on farm country bucks?
Not really. For all of you Illinois and Iowa guys, Indiana, Midwestern guys, buy it. Seriously, buy it. It's no joke. It's not full of sponsor plugs and all kinds of other, you know, soft sells and cutaways and all that crap. Like, if you want that, then don't buy it. But it's full of super good information, and it is worth every penny. You got to charge double for it, Dan.
Yeah, it really fits like the Iowa, Illinois areas, more than even Wisconsin, where I'm from. Because here a lot of times we have swamps and rolling hills influence in it, where when I spent a lot of time hunting Iowa and west central Illinois, a lot of it was spot on to what I seen down there.
Yeah,
let me ask you this, Dan. I've got a question real quick. So my brothers and I got to talking about how often we've tried to kill one of our target bucks on opening day or the first week of season, and how very rarely it happens. How often have you ever done that, Dan? Like, gotten in there on them and killed one of your target guys in the early first couple weeks of season? And what do you think some of the biggest mistakes folks are making during that early season?
Well, I've done it many times. Some of my very largest bucks have been opening week. I remember on 11-pointer I went on a bear hunt. I shot my bear on opening day of bow deer season, raced back to hunt that buck, and climbed the tree at like 11 and shot him at like 12:15 in the afternoon on opening day. But that buck was working a primary scrape outside of a bedding area. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the very biggest bucks I've taken opening week in September have been on scrapes. There's a scrape I call a bed scrape, where if you have two competing big buck bedding areas that are close to each other, which happens a lot because of, they're terrain based, so you'll have the terrains close to each other, and they have a lot of times they'll have the same staging area where the trails will come out of those bedding areas and meet at the same spot, and they'll mark that spot up. They'll put a primary scrape there that they use all year. And I've shot a lot of my very early season bucks on that type of scenario. If you ever find a scrape in early season, real close to good buck bedding, sit it, because it's been very nice to me. As far as mistakes, I think the biggest mistake in early season is people glass a deer all year in beans or some food source, and then right when opening day comes, things change. Acorns drop or food sources change or whatever, and they put all their eggs in one basket. And that's another thing with me too. Like I told you earlier, I'm eyeing up this buck that I've been watching in the local swamp. That doesn't mean I'm set on him or I'm going to go hunt every day for him. Because if I did, I'd just blow him out of the area. I want to wait for the right time to go in after him. But I got a dozen different bucks I'm going to be hunting. And I'm going to go to spots where I'm going to try and locate another different buck, or find one from last year. And I'm going to keep shifting around and going after different animals, so I'm not putting too much pressure on one. I think the biggest mistake is people put all their eggs in one basket. They go after one animal. They really just, right off the bat, they slap them across the ass and say, "I'm hunting you," and put them into that mode where it's not catching him totally off guard anymore.
Before we hit record, we started talking about, Clint, you had mentioned the scent control thing, and I don't remember if it was something that Dan recently said. I've heard him say it before. I've heard Brad Coonert say it before, and that was that it was your choice not to use, scent control. And when I say not to use scent control, it's scent control product. You go out in the woods and you practice scent control by playing the wind, correct?
Yeah, correct. I don't use any scent control. Matter of fact, I've killed a lot of my big bucks in my oily work uniform from the machine shop, in my work boots.
Oh, man. How much money do we spend on boots every year?
So that I can't get the words right, Dan, but the way you put it was like, there was a big debate on one of the run and gun forums about how one guy's scent control, the original poster, was really touting his method of scent control and how he, quote, never gets busted, never, and he used the term scent elimination, and I just don't, I don't really buy into that like I used to when I was in my 20s. I can't tell you the last time I bought a spray or, I'll try and stay clean. But Dan said it perfect. I hope they never come out with something that beats a whitetail's nose, because then what fun is it? And it seriously.
Really, I mean, what you're trying to say is what I said in that post was that they have not beaten the buck's nose. I mean, that's been proved by test after test after test when you get outside of the deer hunting industry that's trying to sell you it. But I hope they never do, because that's what hunting is. I mean, this is supposed to be a chess game between me and a whitetail. It's not supposed to be some trick or gadget or magic potion to beat them. And I hope they never come up with something that actually does work with scent control, because if they do, hunting ain't going to be fun no more. I mean, you think about, to me, if you really could eliminate scent, like you said, the guy you mentioned, scent elimination, I can literally crawl up to a buck's bed. I know where the big bucks are bedded. I know where there's bucks bedded right now. I can crawl up to his bed. But they bed in a way that they're going to wind you. They're looking downwind, staring downwind. They got the wind to their back. I've done it where I've crawled in on an angle on a crosswind, and I shot my biggest buck like that. When the wind changed, I crawled up to his bed and shot him. If scent didn't matter, I just put on the scent control, walk up to them, shoot them in their beds. What fun would it be? I mean, literally. I mean, if you didn't have to have a just off wind to get near the bedding to hunt them when they're coming out of on those just off winds, I mean, what fun would it be? I mean, it's the chess game of outsmarting that buck at his own game in his own living room. It's if they make something where you can be invisible and not make a sound, not make a scent, and you can just float through the air and shoot them, why don't you just go to a game farm? Just buy your buck if you want it that bad. It's supposed to be a chess game between you and the animal. That's what it was. You think back to your funnest hunts you ever had, the both of you. They're not the biggest buck you shot. It's back when you were a kid shooting your first deers. Were you all donned in scent control? Were you making sure you had every product? Did you have a big bag full of crap on your back? You're out there just having fun chasing deer around. And at least for me, the button buck I shot when I was 9 years old, or maybe I should say 12 because it was illegal to shoot one when you were 9 back then, but it was different times. But but the buck I shot when I was 9 years old that had buttons on its head was the most exciting buck I ever shot in my life. That's what it's about. I mean, it's about running around hunting things down and killing them. It's and it's not about trickery. It's not about some magic potion, something you wear or do, or some sound you make that's going to make them come running. It's not about some magic scent of doe and heat. I mean, you think about doe and heat. If that stuff really worked, all you'd have to do is go upwind of any swamp, put it out, and every buck in the swamp would come around. You ever see what happens when you doe and heat in the swamp, running around? Every mature buck in that swamp's on her.
It's mayhem.
All you have to do is put that stuff underneath you, and it'd all come running. I mean, none of that stuff really works that great, and if it did, it would suck. It would ruin hunting.
Right.
So I'm in total agreement here. I actually just wrote an article for North American Whitetail about what scent is, and it's not to get too sciencey about it, but scent is what's called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and there's like 1,700 different volatile organic compounds that the human body kicks off in real time all day, every day. And a lot of these scent control measures are very static. You're spraying down at the truck. Okay, then you're done. Or you take a shower before you leave. Okay, and then you're done. And it's static and not fluid, but the scent we give off is constantly fluid and changing. Mm-hmm. And you cannot physically eliminate meaning done, over, out, zero scent. You physically cannot eliminate human scent. You just can't do it. You can contain it. You can reduce it maybe by, playing in the wind and being common sense about it all. But there's physiologically, when our bodies are, putting out, say you're putting up a tree stand and your heart rate's elevated, your scent changes through your breath and through your skin. Mm-hmm. All kinds of different things. And these scent control companies that want you to buy into it, they're selling you a bill of goods that may or may not have some science behind it. So you just got to take everything with a grain of salt.
2 years ago, I logged my whole season. I logged everything I saw, everything. I had a journal, and I made it public. And at the end of the year, some scent control debating went on. So I went back in that log and read everything, and charted how many deer spooked and stuff. And I had deer downwind of me a lot of times that never reacted. Dropped milkweed, bounced it off of them. That year I had a real nice buck coming from straight downwind right up to me. I was dropping milkweed right over its head. And I think I only had out of 70 hunts and 160 deer or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but I had 6 deer that showed some sort of reaction. I think only one of them was severe. And I had some guys that are scent control nuts go, well, my season was worse than that. Well, yeah, because you believe you can get away with something. I don't. So, you know what I'm saying? But we had a guy at a workshop last year. I do those spring workshops where I take guys out scouting in my spots. We had a guy at the workshop who trains cadaver dogs for the police. Yeah. And he was talking to me about it, and he said that he trains the dive dogs. And what dive dogs are is they take them in a boat to find cadavers that are underwater, like a drowning or somebody threw a body in a lake and they're trying to find it. Mm-hmm. And they drive around in a boat with his dog in the boat, and the dog will smell if there's a body at the bottom of the lake. And he says in order to train those dogs, what they do is they take a pinky off of a cadaver, and they put it in 30 foot of water. And they take that dog over that pinky in 30 feet of water. And if that dog don't alert, he don't pass. And you're going to beat that with some magic scent? I mean, it's going through 30 feet of water. I mean, you start looking at the science of it. I watched a criminal investigation where they were trying to find this killer, and they tracked him down to a motel they thought he was staying in. And the guy, they get there and they raid this motel, and all the police go running in there, and he's not there no more. He had moved out. So they get the guy that runs the motel over there, and he says, yeah, the guy ran out of money and he left 3 days ago on foot. He didn't have a car or anything. So they go through this motel and it's been cleaned. And the only thing they have is that there's a garbage can in there, and it's got like a Coke can, like a soda can, in the garbage can by itself. So they call the maid in there and they ask her where that can came from. And she says, well, that was in there from the customer, and I didn't take it out because it was the only item in the garbage, so I just left it in there. So they took this can out, and they had a dog smell that can. This is 3 days after that guy left, and all these cops have been in and out of that motel, and that dog followed that guy's scent up the sidewalk where hundreds of people had walked, and then down through a park and in through a woods to a campsite where the guy was found sleeping. I mean, how are you tricking that? You're not tricking that. You're just not. And I mean, people think they can buy a second or two. You can't. They know you're there. There's some of those deer, they'll smell you. They don't care that you're there. They don't know it's a threat. Some of them know it's a threat, and they blow out of there. And it has you know what, too? I mean, think about the times you walked into the woods and you walk down a hiking path to get back. There's a path that goes onto the public land or something. 3 or 4 people a day walk down that path. Also, you'll see a deer cross, and you move over to the side, you watch that deer cross, he won't alert at all to all that human scent on that trail. But you know what? Walk past his bedding and have him come out and walk across your trail and see what happens. A lot of it has to do with where the scent is and how that scent gets to them, and even their mindset. I mean, did they just have a coyote or a hunter harassing them? Or have they had a nice, free, easy summer all year, haven't seen a hunter, and then they smell you,
Yeah, you said something right there, Dan, and I've said it before too, and I feel like deer can smell in context. Like your analogy there with the footpath, he knows humans are there. They've never killed him before, and simple. You get that same footpath next to his bedroom, it's in context of his security, right. And then he don't like it no more. I think they smell in context.
Right. If scent control mattered, it would matter most to a guy like me, because I get right up against that bedding, and that's where they're worried about humans.
Well, and I think with respect to something like Ozonics, or I don't know a lot about the other stuff, only because I haven't spent a whole lot of time worrying about it, because I've been told, I've read the research, etc., that it doesn't work.
Ozonic is a little different. I mean, if you could, the way Ozonics works, if you can contain yourself inside of a tent or something, I think there's ways you could get that to work. I don't know if I'd want that stuff contained with me inside of a tent. I don't know enough about it, but I do think you could probably get something to work if every time scent comes off of you, it was controlled before it got to a deer. I think that's got more legitimacy in it than carbon does.
Yeah, I agree. And in the realm of Ozonics, there's I've used it the last 2 years, and I can see a statistical difference on my hunts, but there's some science behind it. When I was in vet school, I was helping a grad student just for a job on their master's project, and they were pumping ozone into swine confinement units that were getting affected by urban sprawl. Nobody wants to smell pig shit, right? So what we were doing was pumping ozone in heavy quantities into swine confinement units and pulling air samples out of them, and you can statistically see that ozone does reduce odor. It's a fact. You can prove it. It's run through a gas chromatograph. Yes, it helps. What they were finding, though, is it just takes so much ozone in a confinement setting like that scale, it was just cost prohibitive. I feel like ozone does work, and I feel like it gives me more confidence on those just off winds or those not so just off wins where I'm cheating it a little more than I should. But again, when it comes to practical scent control, I like using one for that method. But, when you talked about carbon clothing, I think that's been disproven enough through science that it really just doesn't work as well as what everybody thought about it in the 90s when it all come out,
Right. Everybody that's looked at it outside of the hunting industry, it has given it a fail.
Yeah.
It's just people trying to sell something that think it works.
Yeah, and the same with sprays too. Like, there's one company in particular that claims 99.99% efficacy against human odor. That's sort of true, and what they're basing that
if you have an isolated odor, that is true. But odor off of you comes out constantly.
Yeah, 1,700 constantly.
Yeah, you better be pouring that bottle on you at the moment the deer walks by.
I think we might be onto something. Maybe we could get a shower unit for a tree.
Pull a switch.
Okay, I'm going to tell on my. let me tell on myself. So, when I was in my late 20s, and I really believed in what my dad would call panther piss or spray. I would buy it in those gallon bulk jugs, and I would put it in a half-gallon garden hand pump sprayer, and I would hand spray myself all over just to soak myself beforehand because I didn't like how chintzy the little pumps were, and I'm like, yeah, this is really working great. After 10 years, or not even that long, 15 years, longer than that, it really doesn't help me that much. So I stopped dousing myself and taking truck side showers with a hand sprayer out of that stuff. And believe it or not, it saves a hell of a lot of time, and you can do a lot with that time, like go hunt a deer.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you look at the rituals some people go through.
Oh yeah.
My God, if you add that up for the season, if I spent that much more extra time hunting, I'd kill that much more big bucks,
Oh man, you're making me feel bad about my 50-pound pack.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's all the camera gear, and actually, it's typically it's that heavy because I've got a stand and sticks, and then again, camera gear, and as well as I do that those camera arms aren't light, so that adds a little bit of weight. But no, I don't have a ton of rattle bags and grunt calls, and I always have a grunt call. Anyway, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on what's in my backpack because there's not anything of extreme value there. But anything else you guys want to talk about?
We could mention my sticks. They're going to be out in about 2 weeks. We're going to have a few thousand of them available. Everybody's been asking. Maybe if I mention something on here, I won't get so many emails.
There we go. So save Dan the trouble. Speaking of conserving time, so he doesn't have to check 4,000 emails. Your sticks are going to be out when?
In a couple weeks.
In a couple weeks.
I don't know the exact date they're coming, but I have okayed them. I went and I looked at some samples and stuff of the machine parts and okayed the tolerances and such, and we should have them pretty quick here.
So, Dan, Clint didn't have the pleasure of being at Deer Fest in Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, as I did. I got to look at your stand and play with it. And how long before you think you'll have the tolerances and stuff back on that?
On the stand?
Yeah.
We should probably produce the stands early next year, I'm thinking.
Okay.
We have everything pretty much done. We're just doing a little more testing and stuff. I know some people beat me up for taking my time about getting stuff out, but I make sure it's right. I don't want stuff to come out there with any quality issues. I don't want anybody getting hurt. I just want to make sure everything's right. And I work a full-time job too. So it's taken some time. I realize that, but after hunting out of this thing for a couple seasons, it is freaking awesome. So I can't wait to get it in the field in other people's hands. But I don't think it's going to be this season. If I get any done this season, it's going to be for the guys that are hunting with me and have been helping me out along the road. But I believe right after the season, we should have some of those as well.
Cool.
Dan, what are what on your stand? Can you run down some specs on it?
What I did was, I came up with a process of machining and water jetting tree stands. And I started a patent on that. And I'm looking forward to that going through. What it does is it allows me to make the stand super lightweight because it's extruded aluminum. And for those that don't know, for a living outside of hunting, I run an R&D machine shop for a major company where I build new products and inventions. So it's what I do for a living, metal products. And so for me, when I look at